Well, hey guys, I'm Tim Langston with Red Dog Bushcraft. Thanks for joining me for another video. It's always good to have you along. Today, I'm going to practice cooking a meal that I plan to take with me while I'm camping later on this year. It's important to practice these meals at home. That way you know exactly what you need to pack and how well the ingredients are going to work long before you travel miles out into the bush. So stay with me, we'll get started, and I'll show you a couple of tips that I use to make sure that I have everything that I need. Okay, one of the first things we need to talk about is spices and how to pack them. Now, I've used a lot of different ways to pack spices, but I like putting them in these little small containers already mixed up. And they make a bunch of different containers that they sell at different stores that already have spices in them. But most of the spices that I use, I buy in bulk and I have them at home anyway, and it's just as easy to pack them up myself this way. This is just a small container that blood test strips come in. Most any diabetic uses a lot of these, and you can get those from them. Diabetes is very prevalent, and it's not too hard to find a diabetic and get some test strips because it's pretty much impossible to find these film containers anymore. The other thing you need to think about is your oil. Now, I like to use a lot of olive oil, and you can buy these little small bottles of olive oil, and they're nice, and these little glass containers are real resilient, and if you get the ones with the screw on top, they do really well. But those little dinky bottles of olive oil can get expensive. So I want to show you a little trick that I do. Now, this is just one of those little small bottles that drink mixes come in. This is one that's very similar. Right here it's actually a little bit bigger, but this one fits in my food kit very well, and I forget the actual company that comes in, but it's one that we use regularly. Now, the trick to filling this thing back up is to get one of these. You know what this is? This is one of those little things that you use to suction out small kids. I keep them in my first aid kit all the time. You can suction adults with these things too. It makes a great addition to your first aid kit. But this one has a little pop-off top on it, and you can get in there and you can clean this thing out with hot water and bleach and whatever. And when I use it for foods, a lot of times I just use a little bit of vinegar to clean it out. But if you take that and put it down inside of that drink container, and then just take your olive oil, and what we're going to do is we're just going to pour that right into the top of this device here. Get that about half filled there, I guess, and you'll notice that I'm keeping that inside this bottle because it'll have a tendency to leak out a little bit. But if you squeeze the drink mix bottle, squeeze some of the air out, and then start squeezing the bulb syringe here, you can squeeze that olive oil right into that bottle. And you can continue to do that until it's full. And now you have a way of putting your olive oil in there and squirting it where you need it. And when you're done, it doesn't drip all over the place. It has that little closure device on it that's really handy. And it has a nice snap lid. And if you're worried about that coming over, a little piece of Gorilla Tape over top of that will suit you well. So that takes care of our oil and spices. Let's go on to our ingredients. Okay, before we go outside and get our fire started, let's real quick talk about our ingredients. You'll see a lot of root vegetables here. I have carrots, sweet potato, white potato, and onion. I like to carry root vegetables with me because they're very resilient. They come in their own little cover, the skin, and they hold up very well when you're packing them in. Now, I do like to use these within the first day or two most of the time, but they are heavy, but it's awfully nice to have these fresh vegetables on your first day or two out. Now, a lot of people talk about different cooking times and adding this all to one frying pan and things are going to overcook. You got to remember, there's a couple of different ways that you can control your cooking time. And it is true that, let me zoom in here just a little bit, that different vegetables cook at different times. The onions are going to probably cook the fastest, with the potatoes being next, the sweet potatoes being the last thing, and the carrots after the potatoes because of the density of those particular vegetables. However, There's a couple of other ways that you can control the cooking time. One is through heat and rotating it, and the other is by the size that you cut the root vegetables up. Now if you'll look, this onion is cut really large. The potatoes are in a nice dice, but they're pretty much square. So that's going to give me surface area, but with it being square, it's going to take a little bit longer to cut through the inside. The potatoes, the sweet potato there, is cut into a much smaller cube, so that's going to increase my surface area, and it's smaller, it's going to take less amount of time to cook through. And then my carrot is cut to where it's proportional, it's larger than the white potato. It's, yes, larger than the white potato and much larger than the sweet potato. So one of the ways that you can control your cooking time is by controlling the size of the food that's in the pan. That will aid you in having things done at the same time. One other tip, you'll see that I've got my Pathfinder Scout knife here. That's the knife that I usually use as a butcher knife when I'm out. So that's the knife that I'm cutting up my vegetables with. It's important not only to use the foods and the spices that you're going to carry out, but also the tools that you're going to have available to you while you're out camping. Now just a quick glance right over here on the side of the counter, and you'll see those are my other containers that I plan on cooking in tonight. We have a fry pan that we seasoned up in an earlier video. That'll be released out here real soon. And the Pathfinder bush pot with stove, and this is just a little small spatula that stays in one of my cook sets very often, either that or one that's actually a little bit larger that folds up. Let's go outside and get our fire going. Okay, so once again it's getting awfully late on me. The sun's going down, it is cloudy, and what can I say, the light's going away again. So just a couple of tips. Number one, keep your glove with you if you're planning on cooking on the outdoors. I recommend keeping gloves with you anytime that you're out practicing your bushcraft or going camping. It's just a really smart thing to have to protect your hands. Yes, there's other things you can do, wrapping rags around handles and everything else, but nothing really acts like a good pair of gloves. And I use these thin welding gloves because I can chop, and just a good pair of leather gloves will work well also. The other time this comes in handy is this meat that's here. You need to rotate this, and with a good pair of gloves you can just pick that aluminum foil up and spin it around. The other thing is when you're grabbing the handles on your pot, they get hot, and with a good pair of gloves you can pull those out, pour your coffee, and don't have to worry about getting burned, and that's real important when you're out here cooking. So let me finish cooking this up. Remember to keep your stuff stirred, keep it moving, that way it doesn't scorch over the high heat, and as soon as it gets done I'll get it into light and I'll show you the end product. One other thing that I'd like to mention is you can see that I'm burning my larger pieces of wood in the back, and I'm pulling those hot coals and smaller pieces of wood to the front. And right here I have some wood that's cut up nice and small, that if I need more heat up here than what I'm getting out of just the coals, I can throw a couple of pieces of small wood so they burn up quick and get me some flame to get up there to increase my cooking temperature. That's another way you can help manage your heat a little bit on a fixed grate. Okay, just as important as preparing stuff inside, we want to prepare stuff outside. You'll see I have a nice border of nice hardwoods laid down with a bridge laid across the back, and there in the center we have some river birch bark. Our grate is all prepared, laying out front, ready to accept our pot. And over here on the stump we've got some fat wood and a little bit of birch bark. I got a new knife. We're going to process up a little bit of that fat wood and go ahead and get this thing started. This is not the best baton in the world, but for what I'm doing right here, a little bit of fat wood, it'll work just fine. Don't take much to split this stuff down. Matter of fact, with that wide spine, I think I can split it down by hand. Just need a couple pieces. What I'm using tonight is some good dry stuff out of the wood pile. We'll take the back of the spine of the knife. It's good and sharp. We can collect up plenty of dust here. And once I have that collected up, I'll come right back to you and we'll go for the fire strike and get this fire going. Okay, with our stuff prepared, let's go ahead and go for our light. Good grip. Good strike right off the bat. We'll add a couple of these little pieces of fat wood. A couple of larger pieces on top of this bark here. Just enough to give us a little bit of oomph. And then at an angle, we're going to go ahead and start adding some of this larger wood. No, I'm not messing around doing a lot of prep to this tonight, because all of this wood was set away for wet weather like this and has been dried for a long time and is ready to go. It shouldn't take long at all for that to get started. When I come back, we'll start cooking. Alright, we got our fire going now. The very first thing we need to do is get our water on the boil. So we're going to take our little string off of our tripod here. Go ahead and use our toggle. Grab our stainless steel pot, put that through the handle, even it up a little bit. And that is way too low. So I think what we'll do is we'll raise that up a little bit before we even get started. Go ahead and get that adjusted out and tied down. And then we'll position it with the tripod over top of our fire. And we can adjust how close or how far we want that from the fire by simply adjusting the legs of how far out they are. So first of all, let's get that on there. And we can begin to boil our water. And that way, as soon as our dinner is done, we'll be able to make our tea or coffee. I'm going to put that pretty close, but I'll raise that up just a little bit there. Just enough so that that pot protects that string and keeps that from burning. Now let's move in here a little bit closer. Hold on. We're moving. There we go. Try not to jiggle you around too much. Alright, now let's talk about our main course. We talked about our vegetables and I've got that. I've put those in our frying pan. The other thing that we have here is some venison. That's just some lard, and that's that seasoning. And when I cook in aluminum foil, what I like to do is I like to get actually three bins. That's 1, 2, and 3 across the top. And then do the same thing on each end. And what that does is it gives me a little timer and it seals this pouch up so that that lard, and I like using this pork lard for a couple of reasons. Number one, I can pack it in with my meat in the proportions that I need, and if I pack it in a way that the meat's good, I definitely don't have to worry about the lard going bad. Lard is very resilient, will last a long time at room temperature. It doesn't have to be refrigerated and all of that. And I find it very handy to use as an oil while I'm out camping. As a matter of fact, I used to use several different kinds of oil, and I've gotten to the point now for my camping needs, most of the time, unless I'm going to be doing a fish fry. Well, let's pull that up a little bit. There we go. Unless I'm going to be doing a fish fry or something similar to that, that's about the only oils that I take with me. Now, if I'm going to fry, of course, I'll take some kind of an oil, whatever I like as far as using as a deep fry. But I'm going to tell you what, you can say what you want to about the health issues and everything else. Even when it comes to deep frying, it's hard to beat lard. All right, as soon as we can, which I think is now, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put this right up next to the fire, just like that. Go ahead and let that meat start cooking, because I don't mind if that cooks first. And I'm going to go ahead and put me a little bit of this seasoning mix over top of my vegetables here. And no, I don't care if my meat and my vegetables are all seasoned the same. Put a little bit more of that olive oil there on top. And I'm going to set that on the grate here in front of the fire and go ahead and let the pan start to come up to temperature. And as that starts to raise in temperature, then we can start our cooking process very shortly. Before that light fades too much on me, let's talk about having our beverage here. Now y'all know I like my coffee. Anybody who knows me at all knows that. And a lot of times when I'm out, I use these little packs. This isn't really instant coffee. It's really, really fine ground coffee. It's ground to the point that it's in a state almost like flour. And you can take that and put it in your cup. And we've talked about my cup here. This is a nice double wall stainless steel cup. What I prefer, keeps me from burning my lips off. Add your hot water. We'll give that a nice stir. And just look at that. Got that little bit of foam on top. And once again, this is not instant. This is really, really fine ground coffee. And it's ground so fine that it almost completely dissolves. You don't have to worry about filtering or anything. So good. So good. I love my coffee beans. Alright, let's give this another quick stir because these vegetables are starting to get done on me. You get a little bit of caramelization on some of that. Now we talked about different cooking times, and I want you to look. Those carrots are almost done. Not quite. They're still a little bit crunchy. The onions are right there. They're almost translucent. Sweet potatoes got a little bit of caramelization on them, so you know that the sugars are coming out in them. And then look at the color on this white potato here. That's already starting to turn nicely. So even though we have different vegetables with different cooking times, as you can see, we are just about at the same amount of cook on both of them. Now, every time I stir that, I'm going to turn that meat packet around, and I know that's going to be done when it puffs up. When it swells up, that's the juices in there expanding to steam and swelling up, and as soon as it does that, I want to pull that off and let it rest, because if I don't, it'll overcook. Now the nice thing about this is, if it overcooks, it's still locking in all that moisture. So it might be a little overdone, but it won't be dry. Alright, let's finish this up, take it and give it a try. Alright, between Lucky howling and the traffic going by, I think you got time to see one more sip before this daylight fades. Now we season this cast iron pan very well, and there's nothing really sticking in the bottom of it. As I stir it, there's nothing stuck. But one of the things we can do to get a little bit more flavor out of there is to deglaze that pan. I'm going to just take a little bit of that water out of that hot pot, and that's boiling water, and just go ahead and give this one last stir before we take it in. That's going to add a little bit of extra moisture, cut a little bit of that fat, that olive oil, and help deglaze any little bit of stuff that is stuck to the bottom of that pan, which I don't feel anything. I'm going to throw that back on there, let that reduce down just a little bit, and we're going to take that up. As you can tell, the venison has swelled up now. Looks like the Jiffy Pop thing going. Right there, it's no longer flat, it's round. So that's done. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that off and let that start to rest, because as I told you, as soon as it does that, you want to pull that off. It's done. So we'll let that water now reduce down a little bit, intensify those spices. We're going to plate. see how we did. Okay, so let's take a look and see how we did. Alright, first, a white potato. Plastic spatula, cut, no issue at all. Let's make sure it's done. I know it is. Yes, a little bit of crunch, not bad at all. Alright, here's the carrot. Once again, cuts with a defined cut. Not mushy, a little bit of crunch. Sweet potato. Sweet potato is soft, but not much. Onion is crunchy, translucent, but cooked through. Alright, so we're going to plate some of these vegetables. I should have waited just a minute. Alright, let's get that out of the way. Now let's move over to that tenderloin. We'll open our pack up. Try to raise the ends up so that you don't lose the juices. Open it in the center. Be careful here because it can steam burn you if it hasn't set. This is set for a few minutes, so we should be okay. Got a little bit of steam rising out of there. Quite a bit of juice. See, I'm not going to have a fork in the bush, so I won't use one now. And I'm looking at this, and I think I may have pulled that off just a little too early for my liking, but that's not bad. It's not bad at all. Has a little bit of pink in the center. Well, you can't really see that, can you? That's just the way most people like it. Reposition here. It's just a little bit of pink, no blood. But I wouldn't have minded letting that go for just another minute. Now that is the center, and we're going to let that be that tonight. Alright, let me finish plating this up. We'll give it a taste test. Okay, just a quick look. If anybody had any doubts to the way these thin carbon steel pans will season up, as I said, and you can hear as I rub that, no sticking. The pan has become virtually non-stick. We've got a good coating in there, and that's even after using our water and olive oil and not a fat like lard. So the seasoning of the pan has really turned out well. Here is our final plating, and yes, you don't always have to cook your bread out in the bush. You can always take bread just like we took in other stuff. Now let's go give it the taste test. Alright, keep it with the theme of what we would have outside. I have my utensils and my bandana. This hat has got to go, and so does this wool sweater. But let's go for the taste test. But just a word of thanks first. Thank you, Lord Jesus, for the ability to harvest and to prepare outside over the campfire this beautiful meal. Thank you, Lord. Okay, let's give it a taste test. We got our potatoes, our carrot, and our onion all in one bite here. Oops, dropped my carrot. Slight crunch, but done all the way through. Very nice. So, the size of the cut that we did was proportionally right. The meat, once it's set, that pink is completely gone. Nice and moist. You know, I must say, that little bit of pink that was left in there when we first pulled it off, I'm glad I didn't put it back on. Okay guys, I'm Tim Langston with Red Dog Bushcraft, home of global safety and survival. Thanks for joining me today. God bless.